My name is Maya Collins, and 4 years back, my parents handed my sister $80,000 for her studies in Paris. They informed me I wasn't entitled to even a penny, that I wasn't valuable enough to support, so I simply left. No fights, no sobbing, just quiet. I constructed my own existence from scratch, codeline by codeline, salary by salary. And last month, when my sister passed by my $5 million home in Medina, she phoned my dad in tears, questioning why I possessed that. But what she failed to grasp is that I own this precisely because they provided me zero. Have you ever been informed you weren't worth funding, only to demonstrate otherwise afterward? Share where you're viewing from. I'd appreciate knowing others share this experience. In the past, I believed all families had a favored kid. In ours, it was perpetually Lila. She was a year my senior, with gentle golden locks, a smile like from a dental ad, and that natural allure that diminished everyone nearby slightly. During high school, she led the cheer team, got elected prom queen, and appeared in the yearbook labeled the girl with everything. I was her contrast. I adored the thunder of motors, the scorched scent of a 3D printer, and the soft buzz of midnight circuit soldering in the robotics group within a room without windows in the basement. As my relatives packed the stands rooting for Lila at her recitals, I remained solitary in a nook, programming, sometimes peeking at the crowd pondering if anyone realized my absence. Each family picture narrated the identical tale. Lila at the core, radiant like a star, me shoved to the side of the shot, occasionally half my features obscured by another's arm. Even mealtime talks revolved around her, the pom-pom event, her leadership address, or how her language instructor commended her flawless native pronunciation. Regarding me, in my faded sweatshirt and tangled waves, whenever I attempted to discuss a tech concept, my mom would interject with the identical tired phrase. Can't you discuss something ordinary, Maya? When I hit 18, my celebration arrived merely 2 weeks following Lila receiving a used Honda Civic as a present. That occasion, the entire block assembled decorations, lights, a dessert with her name and vivid rose icing. I lingered on the steps, clutching the sole item I got, a Lime transit card, and my dad's lecture masked as guidance. Accountability begins with handling your own affairs, Maya. I agreed and faked a grin, but internally I sensed empty. I understood then that to advance, I'd need to proceed, no motor, no assistance, just my own steps and a determined resolve. As university approached, things stayed unchanged. Lila entered a public institution due to her activities and my parents' ample monetary aid. My mom boasted to all that her firstborn was heading overseas to Paris, her tone quivering with wonder each time she uttered Sorbonne as though it were paradise. I selected a simpler route, community school initially, then shifting to the University of Washington for a degree in computing. No send-off gathering, no fresh bags, just a stark warning from my mom. If you're opting to depart, don't anticipate us bearing your load. Thus, I juggled dual jobs, days at a coffee shop, evenings at the tech support center, surviving on quick ramen to accumulate funds for a pre-owned computer capable of handling my tasks. I didn't resent them. Or at least, I endeavored not to. I repeatedly convinced myself that affection isn't distributed equally, that one person must linger beyond the limelight for its beam to illuminate another. But gradually, the sensation of being overlooked turned into a routine, like recognizing, without checking, that in every group image I'd be the one nudged to the margin. On the infrequent times I accomplished something, a bronze in a local programming contest, a placement from a minor tech firm, my mom's response remained consistent. Nice, but you ought to learn to interact like Lila. Nobody appreciates a female who speaks like a machine. I still recall the summer post my second year when Lila got her approval for the overseas program in Paris. That night, my relatives organized what they termed a goodbye meal before Lila departs for Paris. My mom spared no effort, a white linen, aromatic tapers, and a container of Gallic blooms positioned ideally in the middle, as if destiny had confirmed attendance. I positioned myself by the pane, the identical one facing the garden in Bellevue where I'd amused myself solo as a youngster. The atmosphere at the table hummed with chuckles, every phrase circling my sibling and her fresh continental existence. Lila chatted about courses at the Sorbonne, about Dawn espressos in Le Marais, and my mom inserted specifics amid statements as if she were the one embarking on the flight. Then my dad placed his utensil aside, wiped his lips with a serviette, and uttered in that solid, professional manner he employed for major announcements. We've settled the finances, $80,000. That encompasses fees, her flat in Paris, flights, and daily costs. He halted, gazing at Lila with evident admiration. You merit it, dear. This marks the beginning of your global path. I raised my gaze, assuming I'd misunderstood him. $80,000. The figure resounded in my thoughts like a vacant chime, tolling repeatedly until even the flame glow on the table wavered under its burden. I inquired softly, attempting to steady my tone. $80,000? You imply? The entire sum? My dad affirmed, and my mom beamed, complacent. Naturally, overseas education in Paris costs a lot. We desire her to reside easily, without concerns. Lila's expression brightened as she started depicting the Lou Marais residence with its terrace viewing the ancient lanes, and the tiny bistro she intended to frequent daily. I remained there mutely, hearing the tinkling of cutlery, compelling myself to ingest the arid chunk of beef on my dish. Only one idea persisted cycling in my brain. How could they act this way and perceive no fault? When they commenced debating what furnishings Lila should pack, I mustered the bravery to voice. I don't mean to intrude, I started cautiously. But I'm facing some issues with the payment for my housing this term. If feasible, could you advance me about $2,000? I'll reimburse it gradually. Or perhaps just assist with purchasing some coding manuals. They're quite pricey. I hadn't completed the statement before my mom interrupted, her tone icy and piercing, cutting the atmosphere like blade on metal. You aren't worthy of any assistance. The space stilled. Even Lila glanced up, fluttering in astonishment. I gazed at my mom, believing I must have erred in hearing, but she merely sipped her vino and proceeded. You selected that absurd tech pursuit. You decided to reside distant from us, then manage it alone. We don't fund dubious options. I emitted a brief, sour chuckle. Absurd? I'm pursuing computer science. It's among the most sought-after areas currently. My dad intervened, his voice subdued but threaded with annoyance. Lila is forging a worldwide future. You solely consider yourself. You've never once placed this household's concerns over your own. I uttered nothing, but my pulse thumped so intensely it overwhelmed my hearing. I recalled the evenings I'd labored extra hours at the coffee shop, the occasions I had to select between housing costs and a proper dinner. If that wasn't prioritizing the kin by managing myself so they wouldn't need to, then I didn't comprehend what was. My mom continued, her pitch oozing venom. You've constantly sought to detach from us. You never attend kin gatherings, never phone, never divulge anything. Meanwhile, Lila fills us with pride. She understands how to exist, how to blend. And you. All you do is grumble. The morsel of beef in my gullet abruptly became rock. I laid my utensils down and stated softly, striving to prevent my voice from quivering. I'm not grumbling, I'm merely seeking some equity. My dad snickered, a parched, vacant noise. Equity? Existence doesn't function that way. Funds must yield gains, Maya. We fund the individual who can produce outcomes. Lila possesses guidance, charisma, promise. You conceal behind code sequences nobody comprehends. You label that a prospect? I regarded him, and in that instant, I comprehended this dialogue was no longer regarding funds. It concerned value. They had been assessing us throughout, not in currency, but in portrayal, in what could enhance the kin's image. Lila was their resource. I was the obligation they declined to bear. Lila murmured, "Come on, Mom, Dad." Perhaps Maya's simply, but my mom quieted her with one glance. I thrust my seat rearward, the timber supports grating on the ground, acute enough to sever the strain in the chamber. I get it, I stated softly, my tone dropping further. Thanks for clarifying. I departed from the table, abandoning the aroma of vino and costly scent. As I approached the exit, my mom shouted, "Don't be theatrical, Maya. You always enjoy portraying the sufferer." I didn't pivot. Outside, Seattle had begun drizzling. I positioned in my vehicle, palms shaking as I rotated the ignition, but no weeping emerged, merely a frigid, vacant area broadening in my torso. They hadn't merely declared I didn't merit funds. They declared I didn't merit affection, acknowledgement, or a spot in my own kin. I returned to Capitol Hill near 12. The drizzle persisted. Seattle precipitation always seemed that way, slender, unrelenting, as if the heavens clung to something it couldn't release. My compact flat was tiny, sufficient space for a lone mattress, a workstation, and a rotating seat with a faulty support. I removed my jacket, activated the warmer, and settled before my dimly illuminated computer. In the compartment was a creased memo from the prior week, a task roster that stated, "Deliver assignment outline, contact mom." I struck through the final entry with such vigor the sheet ripped. Following that meal in Bellevue, I realized any upcoming contact would only cause me to overlook how profoundly I'd been wounded. I accessed my device and examined the directory. Mom, Dad, Lila, 3 minor tethers, each formerly a strand that linked me. At times tenderly, at times constricting enough to suffocate. I paused briefly, then selected block entry. No spectacle, no weeping, just a subdued tap like securing a portal left ajar excessively long. Then I entered Facebook and Instagram, the identical sites they'd employ to flaunt our ideal kin, and removed my profiles. It resembled peeling away aged coatings of varnish from a fractured barrier. What lingered below was chilly stone, but at minimum it was authentic. That evening, I couldn't rest. The noise of drizzle on the pane blended with the far-off cadence of transports traversing the crossroads. I reclined gazing at the roof, my mom's phrases cycling in my skull. "You aren't worthy of any assistance." Each term resembled a minuscule shard, insufficient to slay, but keen enough to ache. I arose, retrieved an aged notebook, and inscribed one statement. "I don't yearn for them, I only yearn for the notion of a kin that perhaps never truly was." When I set the writing tool aside, something within me eased slightly. The ensuing days appeared oddly routine. I continued attending employment, still prepared beverages for patrons each dawn, still repaired devices at the workplace as if unaltered. But all had transformed. There was nobody remaining to dial post-duty, no message inquiring, "Have you arrived yet?" Although even prior, those notes had seemed more obligation than concern. By the end of the week, the void in my flat had formed. It occupied the opposite side at supper. It rested adjacent when I awoke. Certain mornings, I stared at the roof and pondered if I was the erroneous one, if perhaps a regret would suffice to restore everything to former state. I carried those inquiries along when I initially encountered Dr. Tessa Manroe, the counselor my colleague suggested after observing my distraction at employment. Her workspace was on the 5th level of a crimson masonry structure close to the campus area, its opening surveying Green Lake Park. Dr. Monroe was a black lady in her early 40s, her timbre deep and comforting, like a vintage blues album on a stormy evening. In that debut meeting, she didn't probe what occurred. She inquired, "How did you sense when it transpired?" I remained hushed for an extended period before ultimately replying. "I sensed diminutive," I stated. Like each attempt to clarify myself only confirmed their justification for never heeding me. Dr. Monroe inclined her head mildly. "That's termed emotional dismissal, the rejection of your emotions. You matured in a setting where affection was contingent." I furrowed my brow. "What do you imply by that?" She grinned gently. "Contingent affection. You received love solely when aligning with their standards. When you deviated, they retracted their warmth. That isn't your blame, it's how authority operates in harmful kin setups." Over the subsequent meetings, she aided me label things I'd perpetually brushed off as standard. Preference masked as motivation. Praises for Lila that invariably paired with contrasts to me, assurances that surfaced only when desiring obedience. Dr. Monroe termed it manipulation when individuals cause you to doubt your own view of actuality. I reflected on all the instances my mom had uttered, "You're overly touchy," immediately after voicing something that wounded profoundly. And as Dr. Monroe described, each occurrence she stated it, I trusted perhaps it genuinely was my error. One dusk, as I narrated to her about being refused that modest sum for my term, Dr. Monroe placed her writing tool aside and regarded me. You realize, she remarked, numerous guardians utilize funds as a dialect of control. They don't deny because they lack it. They deny because they desire you to recognize who determines your value. Her statements halted me abruptly. Instantly, the scene of that meal returned, the taper illumination, the ringing of utensils, my dad's voice declaring, funds must generate profits. Abruptly, every element aligned. By the fifth meeting, she assigned me a task. Compose a message to your guardians, she instructed, but don't dispatch it. Express everything you've never ventured to articulate. That evening, I launched my computer and gazed at an empty screen for hours. Then, gradually, the phrases commenced to stream. I composed about the trimmed images, the 18th festivity with the transit card, the manner they employed terms like deserving and undeserving as the gauge for affection. When I completed the letter, it was well past 2 a.m. I reread it, and for the first time, I recognized that the voice in my mind wasn't theirs anymore, it was my own. I shut my laptop, switched off the lamp, and sat in the quiet darkness. Outside, the rain fell again, but this time, it sounded different. It wasn't the sky weeping, it was like water rinsing away the grime from the roof. That's when I realized this solitude wasn't a curse. It was freedom, room to rediscover how to breathe, how to exist without seeking approval. From that moment, I began living as if no one would come to save me, because, ultimately, I was my own savior. My new job started without fanfare, no welcome event or grand introduction. I was a contract coder at a modest logistics startup in South Lake Union, where sleek glass buildings mirrored Seattle's faint glow under rainy skies. The company, PathPulse, built software for managing transport for small and medium businesses. There were just 12 of us, young, eager, and ambitious, working in a shared space cluttered with half-drunk coffee mugs and whiteboards scribbled with formulas. I landed the role through a college acquaintance's referral. The pay wasn't stellar, but it covered rent with a bit left for savings. What kept me there wasn't the paycheck, it was the liberty to create, something my childhood had denied me. Vikram Shah, our lead developer, was a sharp-witted guy from Boston, quick with words and quicker to spot coding errors. He'd quipped that Seattle was a haven for those who thrived on rain and algorithms, and I knew I was living proof of that. By day, I tackled my tasks, streamlining APIs, refining routing systems, squashing user-reported bugs. But at night, I dove into my own world. On my laptop was a folder called GreenPath Studio, a project I'd nurtured since university. It was an AI tool that optimized delivery routes to cut carbon emissions, helping small companies save fuel and lessen their environmental footprint. It began as a senior year group project, mostly ignored by others, but I'd held onto the code, quietly refining it over time. Seattle's autumns were chilly and wet, but those were my most productive months. I'd stay late after the team left, the amber streetlights filtering through the windows while rain tapped the metal roof, a steady rhythm like a pulse. My roommate, Claire, a night shift nurse at Swedish Medical, would sometimes drop by with a hot meal. "You're such a Seattle cliché," she'd tease, setting a takeout bag before me. "Surviving on coffee, code, and dreary weather." I'd shrug and grin. "The rain keeps things calm, gives me space to think." We'd eat together in the office, surrounded by the scent of stale coffee and the hum of machines. She'd share hospital stories, I'd talk about my code. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, staring at the rain-smeared windows, feeling like two souls at the world's edge, each fighting our own quiet battles. I didn't notice when GreenPath stopped being a side hobby and became something I yearned to bring to life. Perhaps because it was the one thing I'd built entirely alone, something no one could hand me or take away. One evening, Vikram returned to the office after hours and saw me coding. He leaned over, eyeing my screen. "What's this, Maya?" I flinched slightly. "Just a side project and AI for eco-friendly delivery routes." He raised an eyebrow. "Carbon-smart routing? That's compelling. What data are you working with?" I explained how my algorithm used weather patterns, traffic flow, and fuel consumption stats to create efficient routes. Vikram sat beside me, scanning the code. "If you polish this, it could be a real product." I laughed, masking my thrill. "I'm just a contract coder, Vic. I don't exactly call the shots here." He shook his head. "Wrong. In a startup, ideas are the real capital." He leaned in, voice low. "If you're up for it, I can help you pitch this to the execs. We could turn it into an R&D project right here at PathPulse. Clear equity, your code stays yours." I stared at him, unsure how to respond. For years, my ideas had been dismissed or ignored. Hearing someone believe in my work, in me, stirred something deep inside. "You really think they'll go for it?" I asked softly. Vikram grinned. "If they're smart, they won't pass up something that could slash client costs by a third. We just need a solid prototype, some data, and a case study. I'll take care of the rest." From that day, I lived two lives in parallel. By day, I coded for PathPulse. By night, I poured myself into GreenPath. I tracked every variable, every model tweak, every test run. With permission, I used real delivery data from the company, feeding it into machine learning models to predict emissions per route. Each successful run felt like reclaiming a piece of my own story. A week before the pitch, Claire stopped by the office with 2 steaming coffees. She placed one beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "This isn't just work to you, is it? The way you talk about it, it's like you're rewriting your own life." I smiled, not denying it. She might have been right. Every line of code was a quiet counter to the years I'd been told I wasn't enough. Pitch day came, and Vikram and I faced a small panel of 3 founders. I presented GreenPath Studio, an adaptive AI tool that learned from real-time data to optimize delivery routes, helping small logistics firms cut fuel costs and meet Washington's sustainability mandates. I spoke clearly, confidently, as if my entire life had led to this moment to prove I didn't need anyone's approval to have worth. When I finished, the room was still. One founder, Elena, nodded slowly. "We'll review it. But if this checks out, it could put PathPulse on the map." I glanced at Vikram, and he winked, as if saying, "Told you." That night, back home, Seattle was raining again. I opened my window, letting the cool mist brush my face. I stared at the folder labeled GreenPath Studio glowing on my desktop. Dr. Monroe's words echoed, "Money was their tool to control you. Make it your tool to break free." Maybe this was the first step. I didn't need their validation anymore, just myself and a vision coded under Seattle's ceaseless rain. 3 months later, GreenPath Studio got the green light. PathPulse approved it as a spin-in startup, with Vikram as CEO and me as CTO and co-founder. The initial funding was modest, enough for 2 engineers and a data analyst, but that was fine. I'd started with nothing but a second-hand laptop and cold coffee. Now, I had a team. The early days were a blur. We built the MVP, GreenPath's first functional version. The interface was basic, gray, and rough, but the algorithm ran smoother than we'd hoped. Vikram and I reached out to potential partners until 5 small Seattle businesses, a Fremont tea shop, a Capitol Hill patisserie, 2 indie bookstores, and a florist agreed to pilot the software, sharing delivery data for free access. For weeks, I barely left the office. We installed trackers, monitored routes via GreenPath's dashboard, and logged every metric manually. Some nights, I dozed off at my keyboard, my mind still tangled in code. Vikram would bring me coffee, joking, "If you crash here, I'll have to rewrite everything myself." I'd laugh, eyes glued to the screen. In my mind, I heard my mother's voice, "Coding isn't practical." I wanted her to see these numbers now. After a month of testing, the results were staggering. Idle travel time dropped by 22 to 28% per route, emissions fell by nearly 18%, and fuel costs followed suit. The business owners sent grateful emails, saying the software saved them thousands monthly. The patisserie owner wrote, "Your tool showed me tech can have a soul." I reread that line countless times. Vikram posted our first case study on the company blog, titled "How Small Businesses Can Go Green Without Going Bankrupt." The post spread like wildfire. Within days, our inbox overflowed with partnership inquiries. Local tech journals covered the story. I was invited to a Pacific Northwest startup podcast. When the host asked what drove me to create GreenPath, I said, "Being underestimated is the greatest motivator. It teaches you to burn until you blow." The next month, we met with a Portland angel investor group. They offered a small series deal enough to expand our team, build our own servers, and grow beyond Seattle. Vikram teased, half serious, "You're a CTO now, Maya. Don't forget we started with 2 laptops and a maxed-out credit card." I smiled, pulling out the old transit card from my 18th birthday. I'd kept it as a talisman, a reminder that every journey begins with a step no one bets on. For the signing, I wore a simple navy suit, not to prove anything, but to see, in my reflection, a woman who'd claimed her own place. The signing was quick. As Vikram and I left the meeting room, he clapped my shoulder. "We've shifted the tide, Maya. No one can call this a foolish dream now." I didn't reply. I just gazed out the window. Seattle's rain fell, its lights dancing across the slick streets like endless streams of data in motion. We began growing the team. Vikram interviewed Liam Torres, a data engineer from Tacoma. I'd met him once at a tech conference in Seattle, discussing machine learning for route optimization. He approached me, coffee in hand, and said, "You're Maya Collins, right? I read about GreenPath in Tech Pacific. Solid work." His tone was sincere, not flattery. We talked through the break about emission models, sustainable cities, and the relentless Northwest rain. A week later, Vikram called me in. "We need a data team lead. Meet Torres. I think you'll click." Liam walked in with that same steady smile. He shared ideas for enhancing our model with satellite climate data. When I asked why he chose GreenPath over big tech offers, he said, "Because this matters. I want to build something I'm proud of." I didn't reply immediately, but something in me softened. It had been so long since pride came without strings attached. In my family, pride was always conditional: do better, be more like Lila. But here, in this small office bathed in soft blue light, this man said it plainly, as if it were always true. Liam joined the team. We worked closely, side by side in the tech room. He was reserved, but when I hit a coding wall, he'd appear with coffee and concise advice: "Try tweaking the emission weight, or the data's messy from the storm, I'll clean it." Our partnership became seamless, like breathing. When GreenPath secured its first major contract with a regional logistics chain, we celebrated with takeout and retro music. Vikram raised his glass. "This is our cornerstone, the thing that keeps GreenPath thriving." I looked around the crowded room, laughter filling the air, and it struck me this was the first time I felt I truly belonged that night. After everyone left, Liam and I stayed behind. Outside, the rain fell gently, the city lights shimmering on the floor. I glanced at him, then back at the rain. "This feels like a beginning," I said quietly. He nodded, his voice soft but sure. "It is. And you built." In that moment, under the glow of Seattle's rain-soaked night, I knew I'd done more than write code. I'd rewritten my story, line by line, proving I was worth more than anyone ever told me.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.